You are now live, Your Worship.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this regular council meeting of September 12th, 2023 to order with adoption of the agenda. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Cherry, seconded by Councillor Devlin. All in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of August 22nd. Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor Staplenhurst. All in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we are going to go on to item 5A, development permit amendment 2021-12, 1321 Victoria Road West, Jacobson Ford. Ms. Hartling, do you have a presentation for us?
Your Worship, no, there's no presentation, just a staff report that's included with the agenda, and then the background documents that are linked in the staff report and the draft permit. But I am here to answer any questions on the amendment to the development permit, and I believe there may be also an agent in the room from the application as well.
Yes, I'll allow them to speak in a moment. So a couple of questions that I have is this amendment basically is coming to us because of paint colors. The original development permit was very straightforward in its basically going forward to the proponent back in the day, previous council, stating that the form and character of the exterior canopy be left in a natural color, that was definitely drafted in all of the permits that were given to them. The reason for that is we wanted that Victoria Road corridor to be similar in colors and like materials, and to kind of match up to the heritage of the downtown core. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. There was a key element of having the natural features highlight the front of the facade with keeping that wood canopy, and it was noted to have it in its natural color. So there were some options provided to the applicant, and staff did support the overall proposed new building that you see today with the wood stain canopy. The Advisory Planning Commission, you'll see their comments in the report as well. Supported the new changes to the building with the canopy remaining intact and in the natural stain, and as well as council supported that recommendation as well. And the applicant did change their plans after Advisory Planning Commission meeting to add the canopy back in, as that was removed from their plans. So they did revise the plans before they came to council with the last development permit to specifically have that canopy in the natural stain. And staff are supportive of any revisions they want to do to the canopy that are in line with the issued development permit, with keeping with that natural look of the wood canopy, whether that's different cladding and different options outlined. However, the steel wool gray paint was not supported as outlined in the staff report with the form and character that you see through the scenic corridor.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have any questions of Ms. Hartling? And then I will go to the proponent in the room and we'll put the motion on the table. Any comments or questions from council or of me? Because some of you were not, most of you were not sitting on council. Councillor Palmer, were you sitting on council when this originally came? Yes. So you're familiar with it. So if you have any questions, report is fairly self-explanatory, and we can chat about that. So seeing no questions from council, Mr. Vandermeer and Mr. Berg, you're both here in the room from Jacobson Ford. Would either of you like to speak to council before we deliberate on this issue? Sure. Thanks. If you'd come to the podium, please. Councillor Staplenhurst, could you move to the podium now?
Thanks very much for having us today. I'm Mike Vandermeer. I'm one of the owners of Jacobson Ford. We brought Dan Berg with me, our general manager, speak on this. First off, I'd like to say thank you to Mayor and Council and staff for originally approving the design. It's never easy working with a corporation and a city trying to get a product we want. Ford Motor Company wanted a drastically different design, and I really welcome what we actually came up with in the end, keeping a lot of the elements that we had originally. So thank you all for that. Do appreciate that. As we finished our development, redoing the facade and such on there, we noticed that honestly the existing color of the beams was looking quite tattered. There was a lot of black stain on it. The stain condition was very poor, and quite honestly, it stuck out like a sore thumb. To be noted, it was not a natural stain on there. It was actually a solid stain, and that had yellowed over the years. So it really didn't look as good as it did with the original design of the building. Shame on us. Yes, we did paint it after the original development permit had closed, thinking that, hey, it's still in line with the look of the building. We're not changing anything other than the color, which I still believe actually looks better than the original yellow that was on there. And what we're asking for today is council consider that we keep that color that we put on there. I think it's very attractive. It works with the building. I don't think it's too out of line from many of the other commercial and residential buildings in town here too as well. We see a lot of browns, grays, et cetera too. So I don't think we're too far off the mark as far as what city does require. So we're just asking for our variance to be approved in the color that's on the existing building now.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any questions from council for our proponents before we carry on? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Council will now put a motion on the table and we will debate this and give you a decision here momentarily.
And just one more thing to take into consideration. It's not like we have a number of buildings that are visible right beside us where we're standing out like a sore thumb. There's really nothing visible at all. Yeah, if we could leave it the way it is, that would be amazing. It's been a long 18 months. It's been a lot of money, and I think we do a lot for the community.
Yeah.
That leniency would be muchly appreciated.
Thank you.
And it was not done intentionally.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
So now there's a motion in your package. Does someone want to put that on the table for me? And then we will discuss that. Councillor Devlin.
I move that the amendment to development permit, DP 2021-012 be denied at 1321 Victoria Road West for the form and character of the existing canopy alterations to Jacobson Ford Building, and the owner refinishes the canopy to be in line with the approved natural color and material in the issued permit by no later than November 1st, 2023.
Is there a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Palmer. Discussion on the motion. So, Councillor Palmer, you were in council chambers when we first approved this. Do you want to speak to this? And then I'd like to speak to it before we go to other council members.
Yeah, I would definitely like to speak to it. I'm curious to sort of hear where others are at this point. I don't know if the mover, if Councillor Devlin has any sort of perspective on this at this point.
Okay.
I can speak to it.
Sure.
I don't have a lot of perspective. I mean, form and character is one of those things that I find very difficult to struggle with. Most of the time, really caring what color the paint on the thing is. I do, however, realize that we do have committees that do handle this sort of thing and have a lot more context than I do on that. So I'm generally in line with staff recommendation on that subject, and if it's gone to the ABC, then I think that is and they don't like it, then that's probably where I'm going to lead just on that.
Okay. Thanks for your comment. APC did weigh in at the time of the original development permit and indicated they were in favor of a natural color and leaving the canopy the way it was. So when council basically said yes to this development permit, I believe my statement was I didn't want this to look like every other Ford dealership across Canada. I wanted it to stand out, to have that natural element. I wanted that canopy there. They did end up shortening the canopy. I spoke to Mr. Berg about it, and we talked about snow load and that sort of thing, and was indicating that the canopy should stay, and that was the end result of that development permit going up. Now, having said that, we are at an amendment to the development permit after the fact, after the color has been changed. And wasn't for our staff either driving by or noticing that color change and went in and spoke to them. And then I believe Ashley from the office in Salmon Arm had reached out saying what's going on. And staff indicated, listen, you've done something contrary to your development permit. And while staff were having that communication with her, the painting carried on. And rather than the painting coming to a stop, second coat was put on, that painting was done. And I actually had been called down to the facility to kind of go over concerns with Mr. Berg at his request. And said my personal feeling was what you've done now is basically said to council, you know, we don't care. I used a little stronger language that I'm not going to use here in this room. But you said this to the mayor, you said this to council, and I believe that that it should be put back. It wasn't. So here we are today. My biggest concern about all of this is other developments will come to council bearing their development permit, and development council will say to them, we expect you to maintain the color and form and character, and here's your development permit. And then 6 months or a year later or 18 months later, all of a sudden we're going to see a change on that. And they're basically saying, well, you know, the Ford dealership was basically able to do what they wanted. So we're going to do what we want. And we really don't care what council is telling us that we could do. And that's my biggest concern, is setting precedent for other developers to say, we'll do what we want. So having said that, is there any other comments from council or any concerns that you have after you've heard what I've said? Councilor Pyle. go up and say, hey, I can't sign off on the building because you haven't painted the beams. And instead of them saying, well, previous council said, no, we couldn't do that, they went ahead and painted them. Anyhow, I'm really concerned about this moving forward because it does set, in my mind, sets that precedent, as Councillor Palmer said, at least that thought process moving forward with other. Any other comments from council around the table? Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I actually sat on the APC when this came to that table as a member of public. The commission was very adamant on this not happening, trying to have as many natural features as possible. There was even a conversation about increasing the bylaws, performing character in the scenic corridor, so that we didn't end up with these cookie cutter, big city looking dealerships.
Right.
An example was Canmore, I think Banff, or not Banff, Canmore, and a couple other cities that actually have a much stronger bylaw. They weren't supportive with a lot of what's happened before it went to council. I don't know if it's the right term, but it seems like there's been choices that were made quite willfully to ignore what was in their own permit. And I don't see how I can support it as it's in front of us now.
Okay, appreciate your comment. Any other comments from council? Councillor Palmer?
So just a question. So for clarity, then the motion on the table is to deny.
Correct.
So if you're in favor of it, then you're going to be voting against. There's sort of like this flip.
So if you vote in favor of this, you're denying them painting the building and they will have to put it back to its original.
And if
somehow,
if the collective will of council is to approve the variance, then those people should be voting against the motion.
correct. Right, thank you for that clarification. So I will ask one more time if there are comments from any council. And if there is no further comment, I will call the question. So if you vote in favor of this, you're denying the paint and they will have to put it back in the way it was originally. Is that correct, Ms. Hartman?
Through your worship, that's correct. There are alternative solutions if they're not able to, because it's painted over the stains. If they're not able to, they won't be able to sand it down and repaint it. So it's either, it would be either a new canopy or cladding over top of the canopy to be in line with the issued permit. And then if that's not able, then it would be another amendment coming back to council if it's a different material.
Okay. All right. Councillor Orlando, do you have a question? Comment?
I just have a comment. I don't have the backstory, but I've read the report and some of the comments here have filled it in. And, one of the dangers we can get into is if staff feel undermined or by not having, what they've required or what laws have required supported, that can be a big problem because it can lead to like a whole bunch of delays and time and stuff. Thank you to Councillor Cherry for providing a little bit of background that, this has gone to, for example, a committee that has said, this is what we want and we want this natural look and it's not here now. So those added steps of it not just being a mistake, but something that, seems pretty active, intentional sort of leads me to support the motion to deny this. Hopefully there's an easy fix to this. I don't know the technical side of that. So.
Okay. Any other comments before I call the question? Seeing none, I'll ask for all those in favor. Opposed? Seeing no one else is putting up their hand, this development permit has been denied. So I will encourage Mr. Vandermeer and Mr. Berg to work with our staff to figure out a way to put this back to the way it was or to a natural color. Thank you for your time. We're going to move on. Now moving on to item number 6, announcements from the mayor. So just indicating to the community, we have the community food drive this afternoon I believe starting at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Councilor Lucio,
Yes, at 5 p.m.
5 p.m. All
Yeah,
right.
we'll be hitting the streets at 5 p.m.
All right. So emergency services will be out. There'll be members of the public out to collect foodstuffs for the food bank, cash, donations, whatever you can give that is suitable for the food bank. Most appreciative. And Councilor Cherry, you were going to be out in my stead. Is that correct?
Love to help out in your absence.
All right, thank you. And we are now going to move on to delegations and presentations. So, Robin, I believe you have a presentation from Columbia Shuswap Invasive Species Society. That's a long name. That's why you have that acronym CSIS, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Just like the spy agency. Yeah. Just let me get my computer all set up here. Okay. Some technical issues, so I'm glad it's working. So great to be here today and see all of your faces. Thank you, Your Worship, and councillors for having me here today. Can you all hear me well enough?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So my name is Robin Hooper, and I'm the Executive Director of the Columbia Shuswap Invasive Species Society, CSIS. First, I'd like to acknowledge that CSIS operates in the unceded territories of the Ktunaxa, the Syilx, the Secwepemc, and the Sinixt First Nations. We're grateful for their participation in invasive species management in the region. So why am I here today? To spice up your afternoon. I'm here to give you a reminder of who we are. I know there's some new council members, and also to celebrate that we are 10 years in operation this year. So I have some success stories to share and some appreciation as well. So for those of you that don't know CSIS very well, we're a non-for-profit charity organization, and we work on the prevention and reduction and management of invasive species, and we do that through collaboration, engagement, and education. Our vision is that the environment, the economy, and the society of the Columbia Shuswap region are protected from the adverse impacts of invasive species. So we have a few goals, including implementing this coordinating collaborative program, educating, engaging, and inspiring on invasive species management, preventing the introduction of new invasive species to the region, maximizing the probability that we detect and eradicate anything new that comes to the region, and then slow or reverse the spread that are things that already exist here, and then to ensure that our program can continue. We have a small and mighty team, so you might recognize some of these faces. Laura Gaster is our field operations manager. Jess Booth is our education and outreach coordinator. And then we have seasonal assistants and technicians annually. We all are based in Revelstoke. This is where our head office is. So I think we're maybe more familiar here than in other regions. But our board of directors is very diverse and covers perspectives including local government, forestry, agriculture, ranching, environmental consulting, aquatics, community interests, and more. And we've worked to include Indigenous engagement, and we have had an Indigenous member on our board before. We have Mike Manson from the City of Revelstoke, staff member on our board, and a few other Revelstoke faces that you might recognize. I don't need to describe the Columbia Shuswap Regional District, but this is our operational area. So we work in a pretty large area. So I'm giving this presentation to city councils and as well as the regional district office. We collaborate with other regional invasive species organizations. So there's organizations just like us all across BC, about 12 organizations. And in particular in the Columbia Basin, due to the special funding we have from Columbia Basin Trust, we partner with the Central Kootenay and the East Kootenay partners. And it really helps to be able to collaborate with these different groups and share resources and be working on the same messaging. Here locally, we work with all sorts of groups, from clubs and businesses to industry groups. And I'll just briefly mention, because I was at a meeting today with Bee City, so working with that particular group on encouraging non-invasive alternatives when we speak about pollinator species in the region. And the main work of our outreach program is prevention. So prevention is the #1 management strategy we have for any invasives coming in. And so it's the cheapest option. It's the only long-term solution that we have for invasive species coming in. And so to do this, we have several behavior change programs. So you might recognize some of these logos and program names. PlantWise is targeted at the horticulture industry. So we talk to garden centers about selling non-invasive plants. The Don't Let It Loose program is for aquatic trade, aquarium trade. Play Clean Go is about outdoor recreation best practices. So I attended Bike Fest, for example, last week to talk to bikers about cleaning their equipment. Clean Drain Dry is focused on the watercraft, fishing, and other aquatic groups. So you might have seen some of that at boat launches around the region. And then Buy Local, Burn Local is about preventing the spread of invasives through firewood, because that can be a huge detriment to our forests. So these are programs that are used locally as well as provincially, nationally, and even internationally. So some of the success stories in the last 10 years, it's amazing what we've done. And these are just big numbers, but we've had over 25,000 direct interactions with people on the ground, hosted and attended 810 events, including 73 workshops or training events, 51 youth education sessions. We've delivered over 14,000 educational materials. We've also done 57 e-newsletters, 389 news pieces in the media, and thanks to local media that have helped support our education campaigns. And what we see with all this education is direct results in terms of invasive plant eradications at the private sort of level, and then also with our land managers, and increased awareness of invasive species and best practices. I just wanted to highlight aquatic outreach in particular because the impacts to our water resources by invasive mussels, zebra and quagga mussels, would be massive, in the millions of dollars per year just to manage them if we got them into our hydro facilities and things like that. So a lot of outreach is focused on clean, drain, dry, and stopping at watercraft inspection stations. So we've helped support 47 boat launch signs, spoken to over 1,500 boaters, and held 260 boat outreach booths. So we've spoken with boat industry, marina groups, things like that. And then in terms of our operational program, there's just so many invasive species, like I mentioned. These are some of the top invasive plants that you might recognize. So blueweed, giant hogweed, knotweed, teasel, Scotch broom. There's lots of other top of our list. And so what we do is we also operate programs to help control and survey these species. And so we visit landowners, almost 500 landowners we've visited in the region in the last 10 years. We've responded to over 500 invasive plant reports. So people report plants to us, and then we receive just general requests for information, over 800 in the last 10 years, and delivered almost 2,500 landowner outreach letters. So we go door to door and talk to people about the priority plants that are on their properties. And in terms of like getting some of those plants surveyed, over 5,000 surveys in the last 10 years, over 200 sites that were treated mechanically, so that's digging and pulling invasive plants, and 74 community weed pools. We also have chemical treatment programs. We work with a contractor. Here, the city hires their own contractor, but we communicate about what are the highest priorities to treat. And so I'll just mention some of the work that we've done in collaboration with the city. As I mentioned, lots of landowner outreach about priority invasive plants to private landowners. One high priority plant, garlic mustard, was found at a private property in Revelstoke, and that's the only location of that plant in the CSRD. So it's that early detection, rapid response. And so we visited the landowners for several years and helped guide treatment. Another high priority plant, wild parsnip, same thing, worked with the landowner, and there's now no weed found. And the larger landowner outreach campaigns have included information packets about high priority species like Himalayan balsam and knotweed. And then you'll, of course, have maybe seen some of our community weed pools and KGP as well. In terms of the water sampling that we've done for invasive mussels that I mentioned, it's over 700 water samples that we've collected in 13 water bodies in the region, and we have had no detections of invasive zebra quagga mussels in our region, but also within BC. So this is a huge win. It's kind of a weird thing to be like, it's a win when we don't find something. I did want to quickly mention the fact that climate change is really linked to invasive species, and there's several ways in which they're linked. With climate change, invasive species can change their range extent. They can do more favorably than our native species. They can also increase the frequency and severity of large disturbances. So one example of that is increasing the risk of wildfire. So species like Scotch broom have a huge potential to increase wildfire hazard. So preventing invasive species from coming into our region is about protecting ourselves from climate change impacts as well. And as I said, prevention is really the cheapest. This is a curve that shows you over time and the invasion of a species, prevention is going to be the lowest cost. So while it may seem like a lot to have watercraft inspection stations and signage and voter outreach, when you compare that to the cost of managing that species once it enters our fields or waterways or wherever it is, a forest, the cost savings is huge in the long term. And so what we do is we talk to stakeholders based on their target audiences and the pathways of spread that invasive species have. And we talk about best management practices, so those behavior change programs, but also just responding to new threats as they come along. And then, of course, policies and working with land managers and government staff on what can we be doing to prevent the spread. Finally, some of the regional and municipal partnerships that we have coordinated on are training for city staff and municipal staff, fee for service work. So we don't do this with this city, but others, sort of land managers we've offered to kind of help manage the invasive plant contracts. Outreach in terms of, like I said, the landowner outreach, and just other regional groups, and then signage. So there's lots of ways in which we partner. So I wanted to congratulate the city of Revelstoke for being a part of CSIS since the inception, and bring a little certificate of appreciation to the mayor and council today. We had a celebration on June 15th, so the date is June 15th, but just acknowledge your efforts and contributions on invasive species management and working with us. I'll deliver this down the table to the mayor and council. And I wanted to, of course, finally recognize all of the other partners, funders, collaborators. We are grateful for a lot of support from grants and other fee-for-service work, as I mentioned. So lots of information today. Hopefully you can follow up with any questions if you'd like today, but also at our website, on our social media and email and everything. And that's all I've got.
Thanks, Robin. Appreciate all that you do. Any comments from council over Robin and the work the CSIS group does? Councilman?
I think, again, yeah, thanks for the presentation. I really do appreciate it. I'm happy to see the PlantWise program. That's the first time in this presentation I've been aware of it. I've been aware for a long time that, the nurseries would sell stuff that were invasive, and that seemed kind of like, what are we doing here? So yeah, it's great to hear that, as well as the firewood program. I had never heard of that before, so that's my first time seeing that. So just thank you so much for the presentation. I know over the years, back in the day in the collab, being able to talk about what you do. Although this looks like you do a lot, I know you actually do a lot more than that behind the scenes. So I just want to pass on compliments for this in the context of climate change and all its impacts. Invasive species are a big sector and a big factor in so many ways. So it's great to see you celebrating 10 years.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Robin. Spent 7 years in Sicamous, so very familiar with zebra mussels, and drain that boat and dry that boat and the threat it has to the Shuswap region and all the rivers that feed into it. So that's a big program in Sicamous, and of course the checkpoints that you see on Highway 1. We're trying to get that message out as a region as well. So notice that in there. So yeah, big supporter of all those programs. Thank you.
I'll be at Sicamous tomorrow.
Well, yeah, good for you.
We do appreciate what you do. We talk about some of the invasive species, and I think I've gone to garden centers and brought home things that we should have brought home. This in 1 year is like, how do I get rid of this now? Right? So some of the invasive species that you were talking about, garlic mustard, sounds incredibly delicious, but it's not, right? And so anyway, thank you so much for what you do. We do appreciate you being here in the community. So, Councilor Palmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Solzman. Thank you, Robin. I do have a couple questions. Good work. I certainly observed the signs and stuff, and with curiosity. So just for clarification, so this city does the actual treatment on city right away, and you work in conjunction with identification. Okay, I actually didn't know that, so that's good to know that. And then so there's an knapweed infestation that I've been observing for many years. I walked by it several times a week kind of thing. And it migrated onto private property. So I'm assuming the city doesn't, and maybe you can't speak to that, but I'm assuming the city doesn't go onto the private land for treatment.
That's a great question. So knapweed isn't a species that is currently like on the management program. Knotweed is, so.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah, you might
sorry,
be
sorry.
speaking of
Yeah,
knotweed,
knotweed,
Yeah.
sorry, knotweed, yes.
Yeah, and this is because there's so many invasive species out there, we have to prioritize with the costs, what we can get done. And so knotweed is a high priority species. It has impacts to infrastructure and water and all the rest. And because it's a really high priority, there is some cost sharing programs with the province and I believe with the municipality to help private landowners if it's along the right of way. So, if it's deemed that it's something that it would benefit the municipal right of way and it's along the right of way as well as private property. What's interesting about invasive species is they don't know borders, right? So if you're going to treat a patch of knotweed, really it makes more sense to treat the whole thing. You can't just treat along the roadside and not the whole sort of patch. So we've worked with the city and with private landowners to make those connections and to ensure that treatments are aligned. And so where there can be some cost sharing, I believe there has been.
Right.
Yeah.
The reason why I said the knapweed, I've been on knapweed pole programs in the past, but it was the knotweed. The UBCM, there's a resolution regarding Scotch broom. I don't know the details. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. But we're going to UBCM next week on policy stuff. I am assuming it's probably going to be a slam dunk type of resolution, but it would be helpful for us, I think, on something like that, because it's your expertise. There was some information that came back, any sort of statements on it.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear how it goes at UBCM, but and I just heard about that from the City of Salmon Arm Council yesterday, so it's a great question. Scotch broom is really quite well known along the coast, the big yellow bushes along the highway, and I believe the concern they were mentioning is fire hazard. So that's why I mentioned it in that climate change slide. Is those are the types of species that we're really worried about when it comes to wildfire risk as well. So this is where kind of things overlay, and it's an invasive species issue for biodiversity and all the rest, but it's also a wildfire hazard. So I think it's something to do with that, but I can't give you any more information about the resolution itself.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Scotch broom has a bit of oil to it as well.
That's right. The oil is what makes it flammable. Yeah.
Is that the yellow one?
Big yellow bush.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And on the coast.
On the coast, yeah. Yeah.
Probably in your yard down there.
Yeah, didn't somebody bring it over because they liked it like going or something?
Yeah, of course. That's how all these things start. Anyway, thanks again, Robin. Appreciate your time. Thank you. All right, council, we're going to move on to staff reports. 11A, liquor primary, Bircham Lace, 215A, Mackenzie Avenue. Do we have a presentation? Mr. Simon, well, Ms. Comars is putting on her headset, so I think that's hers. Is that correct?
To your worship, yes, Ms. Comars, this is her file, but we do not have a presentation. If council has any questions, Ms. Comars is here to help answer them.
Okay. So Ms. Comars, just to start things off, this is basically an endorsement for the liquor primary for liquor application for the salon to be able to serve their clients an alcoholic beverage when they're in for their service. Is that correct?
That's correct. One alcoholic beverage at this time while they're getting their pedicure or their hair done. We do have the applicant in council chambers today, should council like to ask further questions, and that would be the owner of Bircham Lace directly.
So Sarah, do you have anything that you would like to come and say? Please come to the podium and
Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'll keep it pretty short. I just want to give a little clarification because this is a bit of a unique liquor license. Not the first to do it, but it's not that common. So I just want to clarify that the intention with this is that we'll be able to offer a unique experience within the salon and spa. There's no additional seating. The hours are not being extended. We're not intending on people having more than one. Like, we're not trying to have a different atmosphere. Our space has been created and our experiences have been created for people to come and be able to relax and enjoy themselves and like kind of just have a nice chill moment. So I know there's been some concerns raised. I'm sure that will be addressed if you haven't read about them. And the concerns are have been around noise. So I just wanted to be here to kind of advocate that I also would be concerned about that, and that's something that we'll be managing in this space. I don't expect that a glass of wine will create a riot amongst our pedicure clients, but we will definitely be monitoring that if it needs to be addressed, right? Like we want everyone to be able to have that relaxing opportunity. And yeah, I just wanted to give that little bit of clarification onto what it is. We're not changing our business model at all. This is just being added to our current offerings as an optional add-on. And yeah, if you did have any questions or concerns, I'm happy to talk to them.
Great.
Yeah.
Any questions, council? I think, so just confirming, so people, we're not adding extra seating. People are not coming in as if they're going to a pub.
No.
They're basically coming in for whatever service that they're gonna, ladies are going in on the wedding day to get their hair done, that sort of thing. They have the option of having a glass of wine.
Exactly, and that's a big part of our business is the wedding industry. So nice to be able to offer a little something different.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. Council, we have motions on the table. Does someone want to put motion number one on the phone? It's Councilor Devlin.
Move the council endorse staff's comments based on the regulatory criteria of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for a liquor primary application at Birch and Lace Hair Company Limited.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Cherry. Any discussion on this motion? Councilor Orlando.
Your worship, thank you. I have through the chair a question of staff just for clarification. And I hope I'm speaking to it in the right place in section 1. If I'm not, please let me know. The proposal is for specific hours on specific days. So it's like 10 a.m. to like 6 p.m. So if anyone watching this is wondering if this is an evening license, it's not. I just, the technical question is in the future, if there was an amendment to the hours, would that have to come back through this same process again to amend those hours, or what happens in that case?
Ms. Comer?
Thank you. Through to the worship, your worship. It would need to go back to the LCRB. And then from there, we would be re-referred to it as the municipality. So if the applicant wanted to change their hours or extend their hours in any way, it is most likely that it would be received by the municipality to consider again at that time.
Okay.
Mr. Simon.
To your worship, through your worship, Councilor Orlando, just to add on to that, this under council's current policy, an amendment to the hours would be something that also elicits further public consultation. So sending out the landowner letters. So same notice process that this one went through.
Okay. Any further comments, Councilor Orlando?
Yeah, your worship, thank you. And that satisfies all my questions. I just wanted to, in case I had that question, so I thought others might have that question, because you're wondering, like, is this, just so it's clear for those who have not read the report, the hours are from, the morning till dinner time. So we're talking getting your hair done for weddings, that kind of stuff. It's not evening hours here. And if there was any amendment made in the future, that would have to come back and go through this process. And just further comment for council, my general understanding over the years with these types of applications to LCRB is that although they are the authority that ultimately issues a license and makes the final decision, they do absolutely listen to what the council say. So if we were to say no to something, they would probably going to say no to that too, although, it's their final decision. But that's my understanding of how the way it works. So yeah, but thank you for clarifying the questions.
Any other comments on item number 1 on the table? Councilor Cherry.
Thanks, your worship. Just the council, I just want to let you guys know that I actually go to a barber with a similar license in both Kelowna and Calgary, where you get one old fashioned, you get a haircut and a shave. Quite enjoy it. It's not loud. There doesn't seem to be any issues with any other commercial spaces. And with that, I'm in support of this.
Well, you must have a lot of hair if you can finish an old fashioned.
I enjoy it really quick.
All right. Any other comments from council? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Oh, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just with Birch and Lace, I think it's a success story in Revelstoke, and really like the work that they've been done. I think they're well celebrated, and I think this is pretty clear. And just to comment on the strata bylaws, the city doesn't get involved with that. That's not really our business as to what that is. It's not our area, and there's other drinking establishments.
We
around there.
don't enforce those.
So I'm very much in support of this, and I've sort of been wondering why Councillor Cherry's hair has been getting shorter and shorter very rapidly.
All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's approved. Thank you. Moving on to number 2. Someone want to put that on? Councillor Devlin, you want to do that one as well?
Sure, why not? I'll move that feedback from residents, if any, solicited by notification letters mailed to property owners within 100 meters of the subject property be provided to the LCRB.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 3. Councillor Cherry, you want to put that one on?
I move that council recommends the approval of the liquor primary application for the following reasons. A, the proposed location is consistent with the official community plan and is a permitted use in the central business district, C1 zone. B, that no significant negative impacts on the overall community are anticipated as a result of the proposed liquor primary application.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Orlando. Any discussion on that motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 4. Councillor Devlin?
Move that the LIQ 2023-001 liquor primary report dated September 12, 2023 be provided to the LCRB as background.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion on this motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. All right. That will go to LCRB as a recommendation. Appreciate that. Moving on to item number 11B, manufacturer liquor license, Mount Begbie Brewing Company. So Ms. Hartling, is this your file? Do you have anything to say or present?
Yes, Your Worship, it's my file. There's no presentation, but I can provide any clarification on any questions. I do believe the applicant is also in attendance if you have any questions for them. We did receive one letter. This is in relation to servicing and access for the development. However, the development's already, just to clarify, the development and the building that's there, the warehouse is there, has already been approved for development permits, building permits, rezoning. And this is a liquor license that's looking at the service of the liquor for the service area. So what you're looking at is the hours of operation extending from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. There's an updated occupant load. So this is strictly on the occupant load that the building can, the max occupant that the building could handle with the allowable, the washrooms and then the floor area. And then you're also looking at they had a temporary patio under the temporary, they're called TISA approvals, a temporary expanded service area. So they're looking to permanently approve that picnic service area and all in hopes to having events at this location. So it doesn't mean that's going to be the occupant, that's how many people are going to be there. That's a calculation based on the building. So just to clarify what you're looking at today and if you have any questions.
Council, any questions for Ms. Hartling? Councilor Stapleton.
Chair to, thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Ms. Hartling, I have a question in regards to the letter that we received that addresses one of the concerns is insufficient parking. And I wanted to know, I didn't see anything in the plans that addressed the current parkings, and with this increase, do they have any plans to add additional parking?
Ms. Hartling, comment on that, and then I will allow Mr. Larson to speak as well.
Yeah, through Your Worship. So there's been a few applications on this property. They did receive a variance for reduced parking to 37 stalls. That was in 2017, I believe. So the 37 stalls was for the Begbie Brewery patio, retail, office. And then they did add the the warehouse with additional stalls, and they still were under the required parking as they now have 54 stalls. So they do meet the parking requirements as our zoning bylaw. How we calculated it is a parking space per floor area. So you will see a discrepancy between what the occupant load the building inspector will stamp on the plans, as that's to do with the BC building code. The LCRB can put restrictions on the seating capacity if they wish, but what we're calculating for the applicant is we do a calculation for occupant load, max capacity for that building based on washrooms, and I do believe our building managers and the tenants stay with how that's calculated. And then for the actual parking, what we look at is in the zoning bylaw for use, and we calculate that per square footage of floor area. So they actually do meet the parking for what's there.
Mr. Gipp, do you want to weigh in any further on parking?
Yeah, I can, Your Worship. As far as when we're doing the occupant load calculation, like Mr. Hartling said, it is taken into account by, we do it based on a couple of different conditions. One is, sorry, I'll come on up here. One of it is based on overall floor area, one is based on area of egress, and then the other is based on number of washroom facilities. So when we're looking at these different conditions, the building code doesn't take into consideration anything to do with the parking. It's looking at what the building is actually designed to handle. So the maximum occupancy of that space. And so that when this calculation was done, you can see the stamped certificate as well. We did the calculation, and this is what the max occupant load actually worked out to. This was the original designed occupant load for the space as well, when the architect first designed the building, including the additional warehouse.
Okay, great. Any other comments regarding parking? Seeing none, Mr. Larson, would you care to address council?
Oh, I could say a couple things just for the
Sure.
record. Good afternoon, everybody. It's good to actually come up here once in a while, and it's been a long time, so thank you for listening. Yeah, just in regards to the letter, that sort of questioning the extension of the application, I think, yeah, I believe that we did meet all the requirements for parking for the occupancy increase. I'll speak to water as well, because I think a lot of people don't know that we actually spent a significant amount of money upgrading the water system for that area. And largely, I think it was driven by increasing the available flow for fire suppression.
Right.
So that'd be capable of 8,000 liters a minute. And the increase to our actual occupancy load, I think, is a small fraction of that. And it benefited not just us, but the Hillcrest as well. When we did that upgrade, they got a fire hydrant and actually some firefighting capability. Yeah, parking, it doesn't, I'd show it on that application, but yeah, we put parking stalls in, when we were gonna build a warehouse. We purposely added enough parking area there to try and get us to the limit of our design occupancies. And there is area available for further expansion too if required. What else was there? I think those are about the major questions.
Any questions for Mr. Larson? Councilor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship, through the chair to the applicant. You mentioned water. I'm just curious, does your building have a water meter?
No.
That was my only question.
It has a space for one.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Larson? Seeing none? Okay, thanks, Bart. Appreciate it. All right, does someone want to put motion number 1 on the table for me, please? Councilor Devlin.
Guess I have a job here. I move the council endorse staff's comments based on the regulatory criteria of the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for changes to the existing manufacturer liquor license of Mount Valley Brewing Company, license number 300207.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councilor Palmer. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Palmer, and then Councilor Cherry.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just have a question, because we had a number of questions or inquiries sound very development kind of questions and not liquor license.
Right.
So just for clarification on the occupancy load in the parking spaces, aside from the liquor license, that is already permitted.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cherry.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just curious about the validity of this letter we got and the consequences that are labeled out here.
Okay, so that's something that really doesn't weigh into the motion that's here, I don't believe, but any comments, either Ms. Hartling or Mr. Simon regarding that, or Mr. Black? Mr. Black standing up, we'll let him weigh in.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I would suggest that the letter was received yesterday afternoon. I would suggest that we send that to the Infrastructure Committee for some comment, and we can respond back to the council if that's appropriate.
Okay. Councilor Palmer, did you have something?
Yeah, so I'll just speak a little bit to the motion. I'm in favor of the motion. And then just for clarity, for me is that this is a liquor license. It's not a development application, and notwithstanding concerns that may be very legitimate in this letter, but those are separate topics independent of the question that's before council right now on the table. Looking at, so really the question that we have is this an appropriate amendment to the liquor license? And the answer that I'm coming up to is yes.
Right.
The concerns about parking, about water, those are separate topics for another time and another place.
Yeah, appreciate that comment. All right, any other comments on the motion that's on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Item number 2. Councillor Devlin, looks like it's your item.
Yes, I move that the feedback from residents, if any, solicited by notification letters mailed to property owners within 100 meters of the subject property be provided to the LCRB.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Cherry. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 3. You're on a roll.
Council recommend the approval of the manufacturer new outdoor patio occupancy load calculation update and change of hours of liquor service application for the following reasons. A, the use, size, and location of the patio is permitted in the commercial highway zone. B, there are no anticipated impacts on neighboring properties or overall community as a result of the proposed changes to Mount Bakery Brewing Company's manufacturer liquor license number 300207.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Staphenhurst. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. And number 4.
I move that LIQ 2023-002 report dated September 12, 2023 be provided to the LCRB as background.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Palmer. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hartling. You, Mr. Gipp, and Mr. Larson. Appreciate that. And other staff that have worked on that. All right, we are moving on to item. A minute here, I'm getting confused. Not hard nowadays. Moving on to C, Luna Fest. Someone want to make a motion? Councillor Cherry.
You take that one.
I move that special event permit for Luna Fest 2023 be issued.
Seconder for the motion, please, Councillor Devlin. And any further discussion on that motion? Saying none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item D, Williamson Lake Operator Agreement. Councillor Luciano, you want to put that one on? I saw you had your hand up a moment ago.
Sure, may as well. I move that the city enters into an operating agreement with Cedar and Spruce Consulting for the operation and maintenance of Williamson Lake Park and Campground for a 5-year term with an option to extend the agreement for an additional 2 years on the same terms and conditions with agreements of both parties, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Staphenhurst. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Palmer?
I have a question,
Sure.
just on the process of how people bid on this job. I noticed, I'm on the notification list from the city, so there's kind of one of the good things on the website. There's actually a place where there's bids that the public can see, and then there's an update by staff. So I'm just curious what the process was for how the invitation went to people to propose now.
Mr. Nevin, do you want to weigh in on that?
Sure, thank you, Your Worship. So the RFP was posted on the Bonfire portal site. Prior to doing that, we released communications with the link through social media, as well as updates on the city website and the view bid opportunities. So we had regular posts going out that were scheduled to advertise the link for the portal.
And then how many bids did we receive on that?
We received one bid, but we had about 13 document takers.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion on the table? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, moving on to item E, Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee Funding Agreement. Couldn't have given me a long one, right? Is there a presentation, Ms. Floyd?
There is not, Your Worship.
Okay. Someone want to put the motion on the table and we can have a brief discussion. Councillor Devlin.
I move that the Regional Accessibility Advisory Committee funding agreement be approved and that the Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to sign on behalf of the city.
Seconder for the motion, please. Councillor Carey. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Rolando.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. I'm sorry to put anyone on the spot, but if there is a little bit more of a background presentation or anything that someone can improvise, I would appreciate that, just sort of the context. I know there's a report here, but I'd like to know a little bit more. Possible.
Ms. Floyd, do you want to weigh in a little bit more?
Sure, Your Worship, to Councillor Orlando. So in September of last year, the city was required to, the legislation changed in the Accessibility Act. So it's kind of a multi-staged approach. There were different, so provincial government had to adhere with the legislation first, and now it's kind of municipal governments and regional districts. And basically it's an approach that is slowly, like it's bit by bit. The first step is to come up with a accessibility committee. And speaking with the CAO, we reached out to the CSRD and the other municipalities involved in this to see if they would agree to do a regional committee. Would be time saving, cost saving. So the CSRD has taken that on, and this is the first requirement of the legislation is to have a regional committee.
Okay.
The second requirement is to come up with municipal accessibility plans. So the people that will sit on the committee, we haven't come up with the terms of reference yet. Jennifer Sham, the corporate officer for the CSRD, is working on it, but she will put advertisements out, and it's for basically a call for anybody that feels that they can provide adequate input. And then that input will be sent to the individual or the participating municipalities to create the plan based on that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. Yeah, it's just sort of building on Councillor Orlando's question there. And like this, I'm in support of the motion and proceeding with this. It's fairly small. We'll be going into budget deliberations fairly soon. And this is kind of has the fingerprints of potential budget creep over time. So, you know, this is a seed, and there's essentially some legislation that went in there. So the government of British Columbia is kind of forcing a minor but real tax implications to that, and how this might grow. And we just heard from the invasive species people, and they're doing great work. It's 10 years ago, like there was basically no funding in that, and now it's become quite a big thing. And this is for the taxpayer as time, taxes go up much faster than the rate of inflation because of these increased services. So this is another service level. And it's just some general comments. And one of the things that I'm always looking for a report is options. Well, there's an option discussion here, and staff's done well, fairly well with that. The reality is, if hypothetically we actually denied this, then what would that mean? Would it be a breach of the legislation?
Right.
And is this even really a council decision in that sense? So those are just some comments. And as we go into anticipating tougher times and as far as economics, there seems to be those fingerprints and as far as where we're going. And then, as we go into tax increases, where there's already big inflationary increases, there's going to be labor cost increases. And this is almost immaterial right now, but it's just some of that theme. And one of the things I would like to see, it's been I've noticed in some of the other reports is, what is the other option? And in this case, we could deny it, but we've got a problem, much bigger problem than an expenditure. But I think it's good for us to see those kind of things in staff reports and of what they are. But it's well done, report done. It's clear, and I'm supportive of the motion. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried unanimously. All right, we are moving on to engineering BC Transit 3-year expansion plan. I understand that Mr. Black and his group have a presentation.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm very pleased to be in front of you today with this opportunity. This has been something that was raised almost immediately upon my arrival in Revelstoke. Why are the buses empty? What can we do about it? Should we stop it all? Should we blow it up? At that time, we did not have the tools in place to really address combining the Revelstoke Shuttle and BC Transit. And with the completion of BC Transit's long-range plans, the transportation master planning work, the tools are now here for us to strongly consider this opportunity. Today I have our operator Scott in the back and Anthony Danica from BC Transit. And on that, I will turn this over to Danica. And I believe some of you have met both Anthony and the last LGMA from last year.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased to have them here in support of this opportunity. Thanks.
Is this your computer, Mr. Black?
Oh, God, no. It's way too big and heavy for me. And I figure out how to make it bigger. You see how often I use this machine.
Actually know how to operate it.
Welcome, Ben.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. It's been a while since BC Transit was in front of your council, so I'll start with a little bit of a refresher on BC Transit's partnership model before I get into the enhancement initiatives that bring me here tonight. So I'm Danica White, the Government Relations Manager for the Thompson-Cooney region. I'm based out of BC Transit's head office in Victoria. I travel throughout the region quite extensively. It certainly isn't my first time in town. I'm the main point of contact for local government partners, and I'm supported by a team of subject matter experts, including Anthony Miranda, who's the Regional Operations Manager who has joined me here today. Over the last several months, I've been working very closely with Steve and Scott from Everything Revelstoke
to plan these improvements to Revelstoke Transit. So BC Transit is the provincial crown agency charged with coordinating the delivery of public transportation across British Columbia, with the exception of those areas serviced by TransLink in Metro Vancouver. With the current partnership model, BC Transit coordinates service delivery by working closely with local governments, such as yourselves, local operators, such as Everything Revelstoke, and the provincial government. So there are several different types of transit service that BC Transit typically delivers based on the needs of each unique community. Conventional transit has fixed routes and schedules. This typically works well in larger urban centers. There's also custom or handy-dart service, which provides door-to-door service for registered customers who are unable to use conventional transit for a variety of physical or cognitive reasons. There's also paratransit service, which is technically what Revelstoke Transit is considered, that has more flexible routing and smaller vehicles that can accommodate customers with wheelchairs or mobility devices. And your flexible transit functions a lot like a handy-dart service. There's also Health Connections trips, which includes your weekly trips to Kamloops and Kelowna, and these ones are fully funded by Interior Health and provide customers to medical appointments. This service must be booked ahead of time, but can be available for any customers when there's space available. So as you're aware, public transit is highly subsidized, and the biggest benefit of the BC Transit model is the legislated funding formula. So in terms of funding, we have two main formulas. The province provides about 47% of the operating costs for conventional or fixed route transit, and about 67% for handy-dart or custom transit. Local governments keep 100% of all transit revenues, which offsets a portion of the operating costs. And then the balance is typically made up from local property taxes. And in case you're wondering, there's more provincial funding available for these handy-dart or custom services due to the higher operating costs per hour of this customized door-to-door service. And as a paratransit system, Revelstoke Transit has a blended cost share between these two rates. So the provincial share of Revelstoke Transit is 48.69%. So that means that the city is funding just over 51% of transit costs. So it's very close to a 50-50 split between what the province funds and what the city funds. So I'll give you a quick sort of tour of the Revelstoke Transit system as it is today. And the best resource for yourself or for residents is on the BC Transit website. It has information on fares, holiday schedules, maps, and contact information for customers who need support with things like lost and found or booking Health Connections trips. Transit systems are primarily costed and compared based on the number of hours the buses are in service or on the road each year. And Revelstoke Transit currently provides over 4,000 service hours each year and has delivered about 16,000 passenger trips within the last year. Currently, the transit system delivers service 6 days a week with no service on statutory holidays. And Everything Revelstoke operates a service with a fleet of 4 light-duty vehicles. We'll move into the 2 transit enhancement initiatives that we've been working on that are aimed to boost ridership, align resources with demand, and improve cost effectiveness for the city. So first of all, a service change for Revelstoke Transit is planned on being implemented on December 1st of this year to enhance service primarily to Revelstoke Mountain Resort and begin the process of consolidating the city's 2 transit services into a single transit system with schedules and maps that are more user-friendly for customers. The new schedule combines the transit service provided by BC Transit as well as the resort shuttle, which is operated by Everything Revelstoke. This is the first phase of consolidation, and the city will continue to fund this service through 2 separate contracts. But as far as the public is concerned, if you're looking for transit information, everything will be in one spot, in one schedule, on one map. So the new rider's guide with route maps and a preview schedule will be available in earlier mid-November, ensuring there is sufficient time for customers, hotels, and the resort to prepare accordingly. And this is a sort of draft version of what the new route map will look like, and you can note that it includes transit service to the resort as well as the different sort of hotel areas, and it also will include the use of BC Transit vehicles as well as the Everything Revelstoke vehicles. So both operators will be delivering this service. So this new sort of service will enhance transit opportunities between Revelstoke Mountain Resort, downtown, and hotel zones with the introduction of a new Route 5 resort shuttle. This route will also serve Columbia Park and will replace what is currently the Route 2 Columbia Park. The resort shuttle will operate year-round, with frequency increasing in the winter time to align with peak demand during the ski season. The resort shuttle and the other routes will now operate on all statutory holidays, which is especially in the winter when we see most of the demand. To align transit service with demand, there will also be some schedule adjustments to Route 1 and Route 3. This equates to about 2 fewer trips a day. This has enabled us to shift additional resources to the ski shuttle route where we have more demand than on those other neighborhood routes. The Route 4 commuter will be suspended. It currently runs once a day on weekdays. Coverage in these areas is still available on the other routes. We're not proposing any changes to BC Transit's cash fare of $2 or to the price of monthly passes. And Everything Revelstoke will continue to offer discounted seasons passes for the winter, which will be valid on the entire transit system. So for the customer, it won't change a whole lot. We're not proposing any changes to the Handy Dart or Health Connections service. I will mention one of the things that visitors might notice is that currently it's a $4 cash fare to take the resort shuttle to the mountain. Under the BC Transit fare structure, it's a $2 cash fare.
So it doesn't matter which bus I get on, I'll only have to pay $2. I don't have to get on the Steve Black Express and have to pay $4.
No.
Okay.
So we're trying to make it as consistent and easy for users as possible, and it doesn't matter what bus you get on or who is driving the bus or how that bus is funded to the customer. It's all the same, and that's part of this first phase of consolidation. So the local community will be informed of the upcoming changes through media advisories, proactive media outreach, boosted social posts on Twitter and Facebook. You can do radio ad campaigns, interior bus cards, so they show up sort of inside each of the buses. Posters and advisories at the downtown exchange, also key messages and some special training for current transit drivers who are the sort of face-to-face with current customers, as well as some proactive outreach to the resort, hotels, and any other local businesses that might be well positioned to be informing visitors and customers about transit. So the next step in consolidating the transit system is to increase the provincial share of cost sharing so that all the service hours currently being delivered by Everything Revelstoke can be delivered through the BC Transit funding model. Currently, the provincial share is providing about $250,000 a year, and this is covering the provincial share of about 6,100 service hours. For Revelstoke Transit, the blended cost share is, again, 51.31% for the city. And the new consolidated schedule will be operated by BC Transit and Everything Revelstoke, but funded independently. And currently, this means that the Everything Revelstoke service hours do not benefit from this BC Transit legislated cost-sharing formula. So following the authorization of the Transit Improvement 3-year MOU, BC Transit will get to seek provincial funding on behalf of the city of Revelstoke. And then when provincial funding is secured, the system can be fully operated under the banner of BC Transit. we make this request to the province through the annual transit improvement program. This is a program that runs sort of once a year, so we have one opportunity each year to be submitting this funding request to the province. Timelines are long, and that's why we went ahead and consolidated the schedule as a first phase, because it was something that we were able to do and get in place for this winter. So each winter, we begin reviewing transit system performance and working with city staff to identify transit expansion priorities and work through some of the operational challenges or requirements that might come with it. Upon confirmation of your council's commitment to this expansion initiative, we submit a request for additional funding from the province in October. Following confirmation of the provincial budget in February, we then begin implementing the new service the following fiscal year, which begins in April. So everything is aligned with BC Transit and the province's fiscal years. So the takeaway from this process is that timelines to implement additional service are lengthy, usually at least 18 months from when they are first identified, and that all expansions are subject to provincial funding. So once expansion funding is secured, the legislated funding formula provides annual funding to cost share operational expenses. And in other words, we only have to go to the province once when you want a sort of lift to your overall provincial funds. So we don't have to do this every year. So we're proposing to make a funding request to the province for 8,000 additional service hours and 6 heavy-duty buses. The strategy is to secure as much funding as we might possibly need, so estimates are aggressive. I'll note that the city will continue to be billed for transit service based on actual service hours delivered, not necessarily on the total hours that we're seeking provincial funding for. It's far easier for us to implement less service than what we have provincial funding for than it is to increase the amount of provincial funding that we get. As you can see, we have one opportunity a year and timelines for that are part long, so we want to make sure that we are seeking the most that we might need, and then we can always easily implement less when we get closer to that date. And implementation for this is targeted for the 2024 ski season, but again is pending provincial funding approval as well as the procurement of several additional vehicles. So upon authorization from council, we will include your expansion initiative in BC Transit's funding request to the province. And following budget day announcements in February, we would begin initiating a transit service implementation plan that would consolidate all of the local transit service into the BC Transit partnership model. So with this next phase of consolidation, it would be more sort of behind the scenes changes, and nothing would particularly change to the public except they'd have new buses that they would get on instead of the buses that they might be used to. But other than that, there wouldn't be any other changes for sort of visitors or to the public. It would just be more about changing how transit is funded.
Right.
And that's all I've got for me. So I'd be happy to give any further explanations or answer any questions about.
And so this year, Danica, we're going to be going, that $2 fee will be across the board starting this fall.
December 1st.
December. Councillor, any questions? Oh, Councillor Lucia, thank you. You're tiny in the corner when we got the screen shared. My apologies.
That's all good. Thank you, Mayor Hills. I just have a question about the routes. When we look at it, we were very particular with making sure that we go past both grocery stores, but there isn't a bus stop near the food bank. And when we talk about people who are in financial terms as well as accessibility, I think it should be something to consider, or at least to have the option for the bus to dip off the route to be able to drop people at the food bank.
Your comment? Any comment, Danica?
I don't know exactly where the food bank is in town, but if it is close to one of our proposed routes, it's certainly not a problem at all to be adding bus stops. or if we need to consider making minor routing amendments, this is certainly the time to be identifying those needs.
Yeah, definitely. It's on Second Street and it's probably close to other bus stops, but it would be appropriate. And thank you for bringing that up, Councilor Lucio, for us to talk about that. And then go from there. Anyone else have questions or concerns? Councilor Palmer and then Councilor Stephenhurst.
I'll let Councilor Stephenhurst go first.
Oh, please. Well, it's.
Okay. Thank you to the mayor. Thank you very much. My apologies first. My card index in my brain was going rapidly around and saying, I recognize her. Danica at Silga, we had I think I bent your ear for a good hour, and thank you for that, and thank you for the hard work you've done on this. I suspect from our conversation, you probably know that I have this utopian kind of concept of what transit could be, and this is nowhere close to what that utopian idea. However, I'm actually quite frankly blown away that what the work that's happened here. This is huge, and even for a provincial bureaucrat to look at innovative approaches, so we don't have to wait 18 months to. And so I'm really impressed with that. Yeah, so I think it's a great stepping stone. You've done a good job of going through this sort of budget, because there's all these sort of pieces that are kind of hard to follow sometimes. I think you did an amazing job on explaining that. So I'm looking forward. One of the things I'm looking forward, because every time a city bus goes by, a BC Transit bus, I count the number of people. Like every time I count. So I'm hoping that there's an incremental increase, so that I'm not just 0 or 1 and occasionally 2, and that it's going to be more. And I can see that some of the adjustments that are made on there, like the redundancy in Columbia Park, is one that I see all the time, and so seeing that being addressed is really good. I look forward to the how this goes through the budget. So this. Then I get to the question. So is there, with the passing of this, is there anything that council needs to do in a either proactive way or just say, thank you, province, that you're going to be considering this? We're going to UBC. I'm not sure if we have any transit meetings, but is there anything that we should be actively doing or actively not doing from your lens?
So respectfully, through the mayor, UBCM is a fantastic opportunity to make sure that there is good awareness about the needs of your community, the importance of the province funding transit expansions. Again, as I mentioned, it's a provincial decision to fund these expansions. They don't particularly look at individual expansion initiatives. It's typically more about the sort of the big pooled ask, but making sure that there's good awareness about the implications that funding and not funding has for local communities. I'd certainly encourage you to bring that up at UBCM. That's a great opportunity, and the timing is good.
Any other comments?
Yeah, and then just so on that, and for reading, it's just to make sure if we're, having those discussions with ministers or MLAs, just saying, it's a good thing Transit's doing great work, and looking forward to these changes, because it's kind of way down there into the weeds as far as they would be concerned. So thank you. Just one last question. Are you optimistic that funding will come through?
It's been really difficult to predict. We don't find out anything for sure until budget day in February. For the last couple years, particularly I think because of COVID and changes in ridership, the province hasn't funded any expansions for the last 2 years. I think we are always optimistic that after 2 years of not funding, we will see some expansion funding this year. But we won't know for sure until closer to budget day. So we plan for best case scenario, and in the event that we don't get expansion funding or we're not able to procure vehicles in this timeline, as many of you might know, procuring vehicles has been particularly challenging during COVID, especially for sort of big buses. That's no exception. We have sort of built this phase 1 system that can, if need be, operate for more than this winter.
Thank you.
Yeah, something further, Mr. Black, you want to?
Please, thank you, Worship. Yes, so contingency planning is a significant part of this consolidation. Being uncertain about provincial funding, the acquisition of vehicles, having an operator here that many of you may or may not know, but Scott and I worked together back in the 90s. That kind of dates me back to Whistler. But one of my proudest moments in Whistler was when we moved over 1 million people on the bus, which was more people than the mountain moved on their skier days. And so my goal here is with this consolidation to see if we can get to 250,000 people rather quickly. And I'd love to see us get somewhere around 500,000 people on the bus in, say, the next 5 years. If we can achieve that, that is going to really create the nexus for the community to be a truly greener, active, transportation-oriented community, which is, I think, where we all want to be, and that's the direction that the TMP led us down. And we've got some real opportunity here that, as far as I know, this is one of the first times that this has been considered by the province in consolidating these systems in the way that we're proposing. And so I'm very pleased to be here in front of you and hopefully, with your support, get this MOU signed.
Councilor Stichler.
Yeah, just thank you through the chair to either Danica or Director Black, just in regards to the vehicle requirements. So am I correct in understanding that we're going to be needing 6 additional vehicles? And if that is the case, are we considering the possibility of electric vehicles or something that is less environmentally impactful than diesel?
Sure.
Yes, we're considering 6 heavy-duty vehicles that would essentially replace the Everything Revelstoke shuttles that are currently operating. The BC Transit's electric sort of fleet rollout is a pretty long-term plan. I think we're aiming to have 40% of our fleet electrified by 2040. That is starting with heavy-duty buses. I don't have any sort of potential timelines for implementing that in some of our smaller systems like Revelstoke. So in all likelihood, it's not going to happen within the next couple years. So we would potentially be looking at, once these initial buses are in, when at the end of their usable life, the timing might be more aligned with replacing them with electric vehicles. But right now there isn't an opportunity or the timelines to be introducing electric vehicles in the timelines that I understand you want to make this consolidation.
Just one further question to anyone on staff that may want to answer this. Is just curious on how that aligns with our environmental goals as a city in terms of like greenhouse gas emissions and reducing that and minimizing our impact. So.
Mr. Black, you want to weigh in on that? We're putting a filter on the exhaust pipe.
Tough question. I would suggest that if, in fact, we can get a few 100,000 people out of cars, and if we make the assumption that there's, say, 4 people in every car, that would be 50,000 trips reduced by vehicles and replaced by 6 vehicles moving upwards of 40 people at a time. I think logic would indicate that that would have a significant impact on the emissions of greenhouse gases, regardless of whether we're moving towards green vehicles or not. only because we're removing so many other vehicles off of the road, especially single occupant or just an automobile pickup truck. In the bigger picture, you are all going to a meeting next week and, pushing this to our representatives and the desire to have green vehicles, I think would be very appropriate. Whether or not that can be achieved is a completely different question, but planting the seed that this is important to us as a community is now's the time to make that happen. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of danced around the mathematics there, but I think there's a huge benefit to getting cars off of the road, even if people have to drive to the community, as long as they can get on a bus to get to and from the resort or to and from downtown, it will have a huge benefit and reduce the impacts of parking demand on the city also.
Thank you. Follow up, Council?
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Simon and Mr. Councilor.
Through your worship, just to build on Director Black's comments there, just looking through some of the documents that were approved with the recent official community plan. The council did pass the community energy and emissions reduction plan, and our goal is to get to net zero by 2050. And public transit is a big part of that plan, and it's kind of in two parts, as Director Black was indicating. Big part is increasing ridership, and then the next step is to start promoting that transition to electrification. So it does need to be seen in two parts, and promoting public ridership is a very good part of the SEEP program.
Good. Councilor Chu.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just want to echo Councilor Palmer's sentiments about what you guys are doing and everybody that's been involved. I do have a quick question. I don't quite know how to direct this to, but I'm curious if there's any funding opportunities through FCM's Green Municipal Fund to lessen the burden on the municipality tax.
Good question. Any comment, Mr. Watt?
Is my understanding it this time is that there's not an opportunity for that, only because we don't have any vehicles to acquire. In the big picture, grants are always good. Keep in mind that we are anticipating once the consolidation of the two systems occurs for next winter season, the province will be picking up 40–50% of the tab, which is a huge benefit to us. Our partnerships with Resort Accommodation Association and RMR and the city will, if we can work a good relationship and a good agreement with those partners, will significantly reduce the city's budget impact by sharing those costs with our RAW, RMR, and MRET funding. And so the opportunity here, and unfortunately I cannot, we're in that negotiation period with RMR and a three-party agreement right now for the shuttle, as that agreement has expired. And so we'll be working on that, and council will get that next. However, just long story short, this consolidation is a huge benefit to the city's coffers by having everything fall under one operator province.
Awesome, I appreciate that.
One last time, any other comments, Councilor Lino?
Thank you. I have two questions. They're not related, so if I could break them down into two through the chair. The first one is related to cost. The report says that breaks down a lot of numbers, and it says the estimated combined system will not increase net across the long-term financial plan due to multi-layered partnerships. I guess I wanted to ask a question focusing on the unknowns of capital expenditures like new buses and other associated costs. Just for some clarity on how that's factored in and unknowns of, for example, asking negotiations with other partners or asks of other levels of government. And I just want to make sure I have some clarity on that potential cost and what that would be, or any surprises or future capital costs on future budgets.
So that's all part of the MOU.
And to simplify, just I guess my thing with, are we going to get a bill in the future for buses? And I realize there might be some unknowns in that, depending on that's not captured here. That's going to be a separate capital ask or requirement in the future in order to follow through.
Through your worship, when the cost estimates for these expansions are prepared, they tend to be on the aggressive side because we are only able to seek provincial funding sort of once. We want to make sure it includes all not all unknowns, but there's usually a very safe buffer built into it. So there shouldn't be unexpected costs. We certainly are putting in some estimates for things like the anticipated cost of fuel next year. Nobody can predict that. I think we build in a number like $2.35 a liter. So there's some uncertainty there, but one of the things I can also mention is that with the additional vehicles, we would have the potential to move out 2 of our light duty vehicles because they would be potentially replaced by heavy. So there might be some sort of unaccounted for cost savings in the reduction of overall lease fees, but typically we find that these cost estimates are quite accurate and overly aggressive.
And if I might add also, the fare revenue has been very conservatively estimated. For BC Transit, I think we're looking around $20,000 alone. And then for the shuttle service, we had revenues close to $100,000, $70,000 last year. And so assuming that, when we combine that we'll see some improvements, we anticipate that at least the fare revenue, I would expect to be slightly higher than where we are. Many unknowns and factors of many that are out of our control. However, I think that being a very risk adverse person, this estimated budget, I believe, is sound. And I don't anticipate that we will see additional costs above and beyond what are presented in this report.
Okay, thank you.
Second question.
Yeah, Your Worship, through the chair. So this one is focused on how do we know, what projections or formulas do we use to know that we will get that significant bump in ridership. And as I'm often do to Director Black, ask for this to be explained in a straightforward way that everybody can get who hasn't read the report, and that is just basically how do we know we're going to get a whole bunch more riders? How is this going to work? That we're going to go from where we're at to a whole bunch more. And that's my question for the chair of this. Yeah,
that's a really good question with I'm not certain a very straightforward answer. There was in the transportation master plan, it was clearly spelled out that one, the shuttle was well received. However, we were leaving people behind because there wasn't enough equipment. The BC Transit routes were complicated and difficult for people to navigate, and that the number of turns in each route was such that people felt it was actually taking longer to go someplace than it really should. By blending the two systems together, we've simplified the routes, and with we also added a little bit of hours that were not allocated to pick up those extra demand days, i.e. downtown when the shuttle was coming through to the resort, full buses and leaving people behind. That is something that as a transit operator, I know Scott is very concerned about. And because when we leave people behind, they start to go, well, why even wait? I can just get in the car and go. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we find opportunities to ensure that we don't leave people behind. And so last year, we implemented a program where should those buses be full, everything Revelstoke would pull another bus into the system, starting downtown and bringing people directly to the mountain. So it would not go all the way to the hotels, but it would stay here so that we could capture the users in this part of town and to keep them wanting to use the bus because of its convenience and not being left behind for many trips, which is the perfect excuse for people to say, no, not ever going to do it again. And this is very common in the sort of community, a resort community. Leaving people behind always creates this animosity towards buses. And once you get them angry at you, it's really hard to get people to come back in. So it's our goal as the operator and as the city to ensure that we minimize those impacts, negative impacts to the community and the visitors using our system. If we can do that, we will see increases in ridership.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, someone.
Sorry, one more question, and it just came as a result, and I'd like to thank Director Black for the response. Now, I wanted to address community members who may be concerned that they have high needs, accessibility needs, for example, for using transit, as is outlined in the report. There are hours for, is it still called Handy Dart bus? Is that the correct terminology? Handy Dart bus. And I just was not prepared for this, so I thought I'm just asking right now. In terms of service hours for people who may be impacted by a less circuitous route on some of these neighborhoods or have that need, how has that changed, the Handy Dart service provisions changed under the new proposed system, for example, hours or buses or availability?
The availability for Handy Dart is staying exactly the same as for Health Connections. So the service days and the service hours and the number, I'll say the resources allocated to Handy Dart and the Health Connections trips are staying exactly the same. So those customers won't experience any changes.
Thank you.
All right. Someone want to put the motion on the table for me? Councillor Cherry.
I move that BC Transit 3-year transit expansion plan memorandum of understanding be approved and that the chief administrative officer and mayor be authorized to sign on behalf of the city.
Second for that motion, please. Councillor Staples. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. And number 2. Councillor Cherry.
I move that the fare structure for the consolidated transit system be approved in accordance with BC Transit's fare structure.
Second for that motion, please. Councillor Devlin. Any further discussion on that motion? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you, Mayor Souls. So just a couple of comments that came from the dialogue regarding batteries and our carbon footprint and some, one of our complacency with these really, really long timeframes as far as climate change, 2050, like it's like we don't really care. And even the provinces 2040, that just, it's, we have all this crisis that's happening worldwide and we're at this pivot point and it's, and that's, sort of gets back to some of my earlier comments about more of a utopian view. Ultimately, and with structures with the government, unless there is really strong unified voice of elected officials to get into much more aggressive timelines so that we're actually making a difference. And, we're hearing that all the time in communities. So there's, I'm in favor of this because it's a big step from where we were, but it is too slow. So that's just sort of the general comment. Then on the fare structure, I'm in favor of this as it stands right now. Again, it's an improvement. It gets rid of some confusion, some fairness issues in some ways. It doesn't address some principles around, tourists paying, and this is the destination management kind of stuff, and what the residents, local residents, and certainly my preference would be that for those residents in Revelstoke that they be paying zero and the taxpayer or the visitors paying a larger amount. And certainly in tourist destinations in Europe in particular, with this sort of change in mindset, I think it's part of the result of the pandemic, and saying when people actually got their communities back and said, we can actually enjoy this place. Why are we letting the tourists come and destroy our essence? And so that shift, and I was just reading this morning about head taxes on tourists in certain European destinations, and so I'm just mentioning that because to me this is just a stepping stone, and if somehow we could actually be get a consensus and be very, very much more aggressive on meeting some of the targets, and in our greenhouse, these long timeframes. So I just wanted to mention that, but I am in favor of the resolution as it stands. Thank you, Mayor Schultz.
Great. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? No, motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Black, Danica, Anthony, Scott, appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for your time and for putting this together. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to 13A, communications, emergency management program correspondence follow-up. So Ms. Davidson had sent a letter to council, and it was responded by Mr. Roan, our assistant fire chief, regarding that. Any comments or questions from council regarding that letter? Councilor Collin.
Yeah, just thank you to the emergency coordinator on the response, and I think this summer in British Columbia, this unprecedented state that we had that just re-emphasizes that we need to do more on our own preparation. We were very fortunate that we learned about that fact at the local level, but just thank you for staffers stepping in. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, moving on.
Your worship, sorry, Councillor.
Oh, Councilor Lucio, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to leave the meeting due to the food drive, so I am going to bail out of the meeting. You guys have a good night.
All right, good. Thanks, Councilor. All the best. Thank you. Councilor Chair.
Thanks, Your Worship. Although I haven't found it quite yet, I believe in our OCP, it mentions disaster management and doing a review process and all of that. Just want to make sure that that's something that we're going to have on our radar.
Yeah, and it's something that the emergency program coordinator is looking at and doing that. A lot of the stuff stays similar to where it's at now. They're just going to update things, bring it up to current standards, whatever those need to be, and they'll present something as we move forward.
Just like to encourage that happens before next summer.
Okay. All right, noted. Moving on to item B. Sorry.
Yeah, if I could just add a comment on the letter. When similar to what I made last time when Ms. Davidson put the letter, I think one of our communication patterns often is to take individual inquiries and then to dedicate some time to put individual responses to those. And I think if we see that as a pattern, we can say, okay, this needs to be a public-facing thing, not a reactive thing to one thing, but just that if one person writes in, there's probably a whole bunch of other people who have the same question. How can we put that in front of the public? So certainly, I think as we get a communication staff person in place, it will be one of their roles is to coordinate with all departments, including emergency management departments, on looking at how they can use their best practices to make that happen. Because I do have a feeling like a great letter, a great response that, this could be getting out to more people and there could be more options that staff position could enable. And I will emphasize the point I made last time, and that is that not only will we be better prepared through that communication for a theoretical future event, our community members will feel better from the start right away, knowing that they know what to do to be prepared and to get ready to go. And I'll just once again point to my experience in the summer with my family being ready with their stuff all together and us being able to get a part of it out of the house really quick when the fire was right there. That makes everyone feel better, and not just in the incident of the fire, but up to and leading that, knowing that we're prepared. Thank you.
Great, I appreciate that. Definitely important. And as we move forward with these things, Community Resource Network will be involved in that communication plan as well. And so Laura was asking me about that sort of thing, and the statements have been shared her response letter with them.
Mayor Souls, just further to Councillor Cherry and Councillor Orlando, what's happened in the province and now how the provincial government is being reactive and reviewing, and that's kind of what we need to be doing. It's unfortunate that they didn't prepare, but this pattern happens over and over. So the 2003 fires, it's almost just like a repeat, except this time it's worse. And then, so they have a task, they've just announced a task force, they'll do some stuff. You can expect there to be some provincial announcements on emergency management, grant funding is going to be coming. Staff need to be prepared for those grants because it's very, very predictable, especially with the election cycle. It's a very, very predictable pattern. The outstanding question is how to, like we have the current probably grant money, I'm guessing, the 2006, our emergency plan after the 2003 fires, you can see the pattern. And then moving ahead, really my expectation is, the staff that they're on the pulse so these things don't get dated like that over time. Of course, we can't predict who's going to be here in 10 years time, but right now we can prepare for that, very predictable funding. And then what are we doing? So just further with Councillor Cherry, it's easy to say noted, but you might want to think about an actual notice of motion, Councillor Cherry, as for a future, so that we ensure this doesn't get forgotten. Thank you, Mayor Sills.
Good, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other comments on the letter? Seeing none, we'll move on to item B. Minister of Water, Land, Resource Stewardship, the Economoplex Conservancy. They basically let us know about a lot of the forest area being turned over into an area of protection. Any comments or questions from staff or from council? Sorry. Seeing none, moving on to Finance Committee meeting minutes of August 30th. Any comments or questions? Most of council was there at that meeting. Any comments regarding that? Councilor Palmer?
Yeah, just a question. There was some recommendations from the committee. I wasn't able to latch in on that meeting. And they were going to come on this meeting, but now it's being delayed. When do you expect that to come back?
Should be the next meeting, or is that Shannon with her stuff?
Your worship, yes, I believe Shannon and Justin wanted to bring it forward to another finance committee meeting just to have it finalized.
Okay.
So it will likely be the 20th. There's Shannon. Good.
Shannon, comment on that, when it'll come back to council or finance committee?
Through your worship, yeah, we wanted to verify some of the properties on the permissive tax exemption. So we're going to bring that back to the finance committee at the end of September. I believe it's scheduled for September 27th.
Okay. That answer your question, Council? All right. Good. All right. Ms. De La Salle, do we have any questions from the press?
There are no questions from the press, your worship.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, Council, I'd like to have a motion to go in camera pursuant to section 90.1A of the committee charter. Councillor Devlin, seconded by Councillor Stapenhurst. All in favor? Motion's carried. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back in camera. Thank you.
So we'll get before the end of the year, an implementation report on all the action items.
Appreciate that.